Hey class, welcome back to Pauline Theology and Missions. Last time we looked at Paul's first missionary journey and we focused in on the message of his journey. And today we're going to be looking at his return from the journey and what he did and how that is an example for us as churches. Stay tuned for the PowerPoint.
Okay, class, this is Paul's return from the first missionary journey. This PowerPoint is not very long. It's just going to be looking at what they did when they returned from their journey and then some practical application for the church today in regards to missionary journeys that maybe a church sends a short-term mission team out. Maybe they go for a week or two or a month or maybe support a missionary for 3 months to go on the field for 3 months and return. Or if a church supports a missionary that's vocationally on the field full-time and the missionary returns and gives a report to the church. It's just a look at what Paul did and then maybe how we can use that in churches today. So after the mission, we see this account in Acts 14, 26 to 28, and this is after Paul and Barnabas return from the first missionary journey. Verse 26 says, "From there they sailed to Antioch." So that's from where they left Italia on the southern coast of Turkey and sailed across the Mediterranean to the east, and they get back to Antioch. So it says, "From there they sailed to Antioch, where they had been commended to the grace of God for the work which they had completed. Now when they had come and gathered the church together, they reported all that God had done with them, and that he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. So they stayed there a long time with the disciples." So these couple of verses here show us what Paul and Barnabas did after the mission was completed, and this was immediately after. Also, this wasn't like a lot of time went by from their return. They finally got back to the church, and then were able to get some people together and talk about it. They did this quickly after they returned, as it says there in verse 27. Now, when they had come, which means when they had arrived to Antioch, they got the church together and they talked about it. Okay, so here's a few things that we'll just move through here briefly today. First off, they returned to the sending church. As I just mentioned in the verse, we'll break this verse apart, to Antioch where they had been commended. So they went to their sending church, the church that had commissioned them and put them forward. They laid on hands and prayed and all of that, and they sent them out onto this first missionary journey. Well, this is where they were commended. So after the mission was done, after they returned to Palestine, what did they do? They went to Antioch, Syria, and they went back to the church that sent them. So they returned to their sending church. Secondly, they gathered the church together. So as I said, they did not wait a long time. They got there, and it says they had come. The verse says they had come and gathered the church together. So they arrived, got the church together, and then what did they do? They reported to the church. Well, when they gathered the church together, this was an actual meeting, gathering. They gathered the people together. This wasn't just an email went out, hey, the mission team returned, no problem there, or a letter went around and said, yeah, God saved some people. No, this was the church body got together so that they could hear from their missionaries in person what took place. And so what did take place? Well, they reported to the church. And what does it say there on the screen? They reported all. And obviously the emphasis on my voice of all. They gave a detailed report to the church. Paul knew how important it was to communicate these fruits that were born during the first missionary journey. As the church sent them out and had been supporting them in prayer and thinking about them and also wondering what's going on. In that day, there was not fast communication like we have today, so they would be wondering what's going on. When Paul and Barnabas get back from this first missionary journey, they reported in detail, and Paul knew that they needed to know these fruits that were born, how God used them, and how many people came to Christ and churches were started. So it would have been a report back to the church. Just continuing that, the faithful church at Antioch would have been praying for the men journeying, so this would be an encouragement to them. So as they've been praying for however long this journey was, and we don't know exactly how long it was, and with anything with dates in the Bible like this, we have to kind of get a range or just an estimate time, and many sources believe the first missionary journey was between they left in 46 AD and returned in 48 AD, so maybe 2 years, 1 or 2 years. it would have taken them. But during this time, the church would have been praying for them. And when they get back and they hear the success of it, that would have been an encouragement how God answered prayer. And that's an encouragement to the church that the journey that they sent these missionaries on was successful. So it also says that they reported. This is both Paul and Barnabas gave their insights on this journey. It wasn't just Paul speaking or Barnabas, it says they. So when Luke puts they in there, it means that Paul and Barnabas both gave their reports back to the church. And also, like I said, they reported all. It's a very detailed report. And then we see that the message to the church was focused on God moving. So when they reported all that takes place, it wasn't just up there storytelling and just kind of recounting some of their memories. This was a report saying, hey, church, God used us and God moved in the places that we went to. It says in the verse that God had done with them. So the whole focus was on God moving, what God had done. It wasn't on other things. It wasn't on sightseeing or cultural experiences or anything like that, which sometimes that's a temptation in churches and missions trips to, let's say they go on a 10-day mission trip. Well, how many days are going to be for sightseeing? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with taking a day and looking at some of the sites in the area. It's a new area for people to go to. But if the people come back to the church to report back and all they do is report on how they went to the Eiffel Tower or how they went to some museum or how they went to this big monument or whatever, well, then this gives us the impression that, well, all you did was go on a vacation and go sightsee and enjoy these different experiences in the world, instead of, hey, what did God do in the area that you were at, and what did God do through you? And really, the church wants to hear about that. The church wants to hear about people being saved and how other churches are started or whatever the case may be. And again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with if they report back to the church and say, hey, we took a day and we did some sightseeing because it was the last day of the trip, and the missionary we went to help support, they wanted to treat us to that or something like that. Again, there's nothing wrong with seeing some sights, but that's not the focus of a mission trip. And definitely when reporting back to the church, they want to hear what God has done through the team. And then we also see this interesting part in the verse, that he had opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. This points to future mission opportunities. God had opened the door there for them, and the door was opened. We're going to see with the Macedonian call that Paul wanted to go to a certain area, and the Holy Spirit prevented him from going there because God did not want him to go to that area at that time. So we can see that God opens doors and closes doors and all of that. But here we see that he opened the door of faith to the Gentiles. So where this door is open, there's future mission opportunities, which obviously we see come to fruition in the book of Acts, because Paul's going to go on 2 more missionary journeys specifically. And then his 4th journey, which is to Rome, where he's under arrest, obviously he is going to be sharing the gospel then too. But specifically, we have 2 more mission journeys coming for Paul. And so there's future mission opportunity. But also there's a time of refreshing. So at the end of the passage that I read, it says, so they stayed there a long time with the disciples. So MacArthur's commentary says that it was about 1 year that they, in regards to the timeline of things, that the timeline of the book of Acts, about 1 year they stayed there in Antioch and were with the disciples. Well, what did they do? Well, they obviously ministered there and worshiped there and spent time in discipleship and praying and all of that. It's a time of refreshing. They came back from this journey, and they were definitely persecuted on the journey. Paul was stoned during this journey, and now it's back at the home church, and there's a time of refreshing, and there's going to be some things going on there also, such as the Jerusalem Council. But we're going to see that it's a time of refreshing that prepares them for the next stage, going out onto the second missionary journey. So the question is, what are some practical ways churches can promote missions after a team returns from a mission journey? So in the Moodle forum that I have in there in Moodle, I just want you to just give a list. You don't have to get in great detail, just a list of things that a church can do to promote missions when a team returns. What is it that they can do specifically to promote it in the church body there? So you can fill out that Moodle forum, and we'll see what you come up with. Okay, so that is it for this PowerPoint. Like I said, it was a short one today, just looking at the return from the first missionary journey. I'll see you in a second.
All right, class, that's it for today. Next time, we're going to be looking at the Macedonian call. I'll see you then.